This is Matthew Cratter from Trader University, and today I want to talk about Putin turning off the Nord Stream pipeline and what this means for Europe, especially what this means for Europe's economy. I've been getting a lot of questions from listeners. So what happened over the long weekend, at least the long weekend in the U.S., is that I believe it was on Friday, Russia said they were temporarily shutting down the Nord Stream pipeline to repair a small leak. But as the weekend progressed, it became increasingly clear that this was an indefinite shutoff. So what's happened now is that natural gas flowing through the Nord Stream pipelines has been suspended by Russia until Europe agrees to lift the sanctions against Russia. Now, Nord Stream, as I said, is this natural gas pipeline. It goes under the Baltic Sea from Russia to Germany. And for the past, call it 10 years or so, this really has become one of the major energy sources for Europe. And they've really put their future and put their economies in Russian hands because of this. So I wanted to ask and talk about the economic implications of this. And I think one way of doing that is to ask this question: what is the proper monetary and fiscal policy when your citizens, and I'm talking about the EU as a whole here, Germany's in particular trouble because their manufacturing base there, which is highly dependent on Russian natural gas. But what's the proper monetary and fiscal policy when citizens cannot afford their winter heating bills, when citizens can't work because the factories are idle, because there's no natural gas to power them, and also what happens to the entire economy when citizens stop spending, either because they don't have any money from their paycheck because they're not working, or because all the local businesses around them are closing due to very high energy costs. And we're seeing this not just in the EU, but in the UK, a lot of very sad stories coming out of these various countries, local businesses especially suffering. And you see these stories of local coffee shop power electricity bills going up 10x or 20x, whatever the numbers are. So the question is, what is the proper way of dealing this if you're the fiscal authority or the monetary authority like a central bank? And it's obviously, if we're going to accept this backdrop of fiat money and the fiat financial system, the obvious way to go is stimulus checks, and loose monetary policy, which means lower interest rates and quantitative easing. So the problem with stimmy checks, though, is that your tax revenues are down because everyone's at home, no one's working, because the factories are idle, the coffee shops are shut. And I'm exaggerating a little bit here, but what happens in economics always takes place on the margins. And this is what is happening. Tax revenues are falling, the economy is slowing, and factories are idling. So you obviously need to pay for these stimulus checks with freshly printed money, in this case, freshly printed euros, because you can't pay for it with tax revenues because they are down, and you're needing to increase government spending to try to create some aggregate demand that offsets these very recessionary and deflationary pressures. So tax revenues are down. You need to borrow the money to print these stimmy checks up. You need to issue bonds. So individual countries like Germany or France would issue euro-denominated bonds or debt, government debt. And then what happens, and what has been happening, especially really for the peripheral countries, especially Southern Europe, is that the ECB has been buying their government bonds with freshly printed euros. And now this is going to be increasingly necessary for German government bonds as well, simply because tax revenues are down. So what's the problem with this? Well, the big problem really happens when energy enters the mix, because when you print a lot more of your currency, it weakens your currency versus other currencies. And then because the EU is a net energy importer, this actually raises the costs of their imported energy. Now, there's a problem here where there's not even energy to import through these pipelines because they've been turned off, but you do need to pay. You can use liquid natural gas, LNG. There are other sources of energy, obviously, including coal, including importing firewood from the U.S., which I'm hearing is increasingly happening to burn for Germans and French, to burn in their fireplaces to stay warm this winter. So this is the problem with printing more money. It devalues your currency. It makes it more expensive to import energy. Local energy costs go up. This further hurts the economy and makes it impossible. If you have a recessionary economy, it makes it impossible to pay off that government debt without printing more money. So this is really a vicious cycle that you can get yourself into. The Germany's ruling coalition has agreed to spend 65 billion euros on a new inflation relief package. So this is a version of stimulus checks where you print up money, you issue bonds, the central bank buys those bonds on the margins, and you can spend more money even though you don't have the tax revenues to spend it. And as we said, this hurts the currency. So we can see here how much the euro has fallen versus the US dollar, trading under parity for the last few days, really with no bottom in sight. So slowing economy, as we've said, demands lower interest rates, dovish monetary policy, and money printing. The problem with this is money printing weakens the currency, drives up energy costs further. So what is the solution for Europe? And in this case, it might be the case that central bankers cannot, this is a problem that central bankers cannot solve. Not that they solve any problems, they just paper it over with printed money. But Germany may have to take real steps in terms of energy independence. So now they're saying they're not going to shutter these remaining two, or the remaining 2 out of 3 nuclear power plants. They're going to keep them on reserve. And this is quite uncomfortable thing for the German Green Party to be doing, because they're supposed to be shutting these down. But you can imagine people won't complain if they're freezing in their homes during the winter. I think what eventually happens is the sanctions break down. There's already been a hint of this coming out of Italy with Salvini, who's a little bit more to the right, saying that the West should rethink sanctions for Russia and that Europe just cannot survive without Russian energy. So it's going to be very interesting to watch this situation evolve, and it could be a very, very rough winter for our European brothers and sisters, and I pray and hope that doesn't happen. Another side development that's quite interesting is there was talk over the weekend that the Bank of Russia and the Russian Ministry of Finance have agreed to allow, there have been these bans of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin in Russia, and then removing the bans. It looks like the latest step is approving Bitcoin and other cryptocurrency payments to be used in international trade. And so if Europe wants to buy Russian energy, at some point they might have to use either gold or use Bitcoin. But this is quite interesting to see the story evolve in the context of dollar hegemony breaking down, fiat currencies like the euro being printed into oblivion, and now cryptocurrencies coming on the scene, and Russia offering to use it for international trade, possibly. We will see if the story turns out to be true. But we really are seeing a fundamental realignment here and a reordering of the world's economic system. And we're very much in the middle of it right now. I think it's going to be a difficult winter for many people, and we're going to continue to monitor this to see how it plays out. If you found this video helpful, be sure to hit that subscribe and like button. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video. And let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.